Hello, Tennis Weekly listeners. This episode is brought to you by Tennis Channel.
Tennis Channel is the new home of British grass court tennis after signing a 4-year deal with the Lawn Tennis Association.
With a subscription to Tennis Channel of just £2.49 a month, it's the only place you can watch every single match on the green stuff, including the Rothesay Classic in Birmingham,
the Cinch Championships from Queens,
the Rothesay International from Eastbourne,
and the only place to watch the ATP Challenger in Ilkley.
With lineups including French Open winner Carlos Alcaraz and Naomi Osaka,
as well as home hopes Emma Raducanu, Sir Andy Murray and Jack Draper.
And to top it all off, we have an exclusive Tennis Channel introductory offer for our listeners.
Yes, that's right. Using the code GRASS24, you can save 30% on your annual subscription with Tennis Channel. That's GRASS24 for 30% off your annual subscription.
Sign up now to Tennis Channel at tennischannel.app or download the app and use the offer code during sign up.
So what are you waiting for? Sign up today and don't miss another day's play from the grass court season.
Please take your seats quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim and Chris. On today's Tennis Weekly Diaries,
we give our fan verdict on what it's like to attend Queens,
celebrate some of our favourite Queens moments,
and we go behind the scenes with interviews from Carlos Alcaraz and Andy Murray.
Chris, today is the 20th of June and we are here for the next instalment of the Tennis Weekly Diaries at Tennis Weekly HQ. Now, for any of our listeners who have never listened to our Tennis Weekly Diaries series before, this is where we go undercover at tournaments to offer listeners our verdict of what the experience truly is like as a tennis fan. And this British grass court season, we're going to be bringing the Tennis Weekly fan treatment to two staples of the grass court season, and that is Eastbourne and Queens. In this episode, we will be giving listeners the download on Queens with the launch of our Tennis Weekly event scorecard, our Tennis Weekly top tips, really looking forward to that one, plus we take a stroll down memory lane of our favourite memories of the event. Chris, you are going to be in the hot seat, the Tennis Weekly hot seat, for our Eastbourne episode later in the summer, but for now, I am in the hot seat as I have been treating myself and sunning myself over the last few days at the Queen's Club to experience all it can offer.
It's all in the name of Tennis Weekly to bring this insight, Joel, isn't it?
It's an important fact-finding mission. I brief myself every time I'm kind of walking towards the event from the tube stop that I'm here for the fans. I want the fan experience. Yes, I'm here as media, and I do get catering and a bit of the the luxuries that fans might not experience. But also, I'm there as a fan,
it's just like us.
I'm just like everyone else, and I'm roaming around. I love hearing and overhearing conversations that are going on in the grounds, experiencing it like a fan. So, lots and lots of good stuff.
And it's been a little while since we've done one of these. So, listeners, we do forgive you if you don't remember these. But some of my first memories of recording the podcast was actually in Prague during the daily diaries from the Billie Jean King Cup. And then since then, we've had a few here and there. I think we'd had a Rome one. We've done a few in the clay court season, so it's great to be able to provide that insight on grass, because I think for a lot of our listeners, Queens is one that either they really enjoy going to and have been to before, or maybe they're thinking about going and they'd like to hear a little bit more about what it's like.
Yeah, exactly. I love doing these episodes. They're a little bit different from our tour catch-ups, and it really, I think, is a valuable resource if you're ever thinking about going to the grass court season or the event we're talking about. We're here to give you the kind of the real
what you really need to know
experience. You're not just kind of reading it off the website or a brochure. We're here as fans to give you what the genuine experience is like.
Absolutely, and our fans have also been asked what their top tips are, and I think, Joel, some of these you definitely could be learning from as well. So
I know. We'll be getting onto that. We did crowdsource some tips as well from fans who have gone. But Chris, we're going to start with a stroll down the Queen's memory lane with some Tennis Weekly memories. of the event. Now, Queens is a 500 event on the grass court season, and it's gone through lots of different, I feel like, branding over the years. We've already spoken about pre-recording the fact that it was the Stella Artois Championships way back in the day, and it was all like red branding,
bright red, yes.
And then it went to, I think, Aegon, which is like I think it's an insurer, and it was all blue.
Was it washing machines? We really don't know. But there was also a Fever Tree iteration that came in.
It's just been lots of different colours. But right now, it's the Purple Championships.
Cinch, but easy to refer to it as Queens because everyone will know what you mean.
And similar to Wimbledon, it is a tennis club. It is the Queen's Club. So it's a very traditional tournament. It's got a clubhouse on one side of centre court. So it's got that kind of traditional feel to it, that it feels like, although it's an elite level event and a very well respected event on the tour, it's got a tennis club feel to it.
Yeah, and we've had a few of them. I think Alina said in Buenos Aires, there's obviously the clubhouse there, and I think it's a bit different because the clubhouse is actually integrated into the stands, and they show it a lot on television. They don't show the gigantic stands quite as much. But I think here, I'm always surprised when I've been by just how many people can watch the matches on centre court, despite it being obviously quite an intimate clubhouse, Joel.
I mean, the clubhouse is fascinating. It's where the press room is actually, and the gangways are so narrow, and it's just kind of pure bedlam and chaos when players are walking through onto the court. You've got the hospitality, the members, the players, and then you've got me and all the other press trying to get to the mix zone and the press
shoulder barging
area.
The members out the way, trying to get the Andy Murray
trying
quote.
trying not to spill their jugs of Pimm. So it gets very kind of chaotic, but the atmosphere is fantastic, and we're going to be getting onto that in a bit. But let's look at, first of all, our memories. And although Kim is not here, she actually voice noted in her favourite Queen's memory, and we're going to have a listen to that now.
With Queens being on this week, it's brought back a load of memories from attending that tournament in previous years. And actually, the memory that I have that's kind of really overriding for me is not from an actual match that took place at Queens, but from a really wet day where all the tennis was rained off and there was nothing else to do but hope the rain ended, and also to tune into the Roland Garros final. I think it was 2011, and the final in Roland Garros had been pushed to the Monday because of the weather there. And a group of us were kind of standing out in the rain at Queens watching the tennis on the screen, and it was the fifth set between Rafa and Novak, and I remember Rafa winning. I think Novak double faulted on championship point down, and yeah, it was just that was my overriding memory of the grass courts at Queen, was a very wet Roland Garros kind of moment. But back in the days where Roland Garros was, right before Queens, which does seem quite crazy now. But it got me thinking, what have been your best or most, unique memories from when you've been to the Queen's Club Championships?
That is classic Kim. Of course it was Nadal, and of course it wasn't at Queens. I think she's really excelled herself on that one. But was it 2011?
Yeah, we had to fact check this. We're pretty sure Kim meant 2012. Rafa Djokovic. It went 4 sets. It started on a Sunday. It finished on a Monday, and I think that's one of the things with Queens is that, like, back then it really was like the kickoff to the grass court season. I always remember the visual difference from like orangey red clay to green grass. It's just so striking on the TV, and the fact that you were, as a fan, going from watching it on TV at Roland Garros on the Sunday to the grass of Queens on the Monday. I don't think there's such a difference, like visceral difference, I think, in terms of court surfaces, other than that particular moment.
There's no time to adjust either. I've always this is a little bit of a memory. It's not my most prominent memory, but I always remember Nadal when he picked up the French Open title. Then you see him a couple of days later on the grass, and you think, has he just hopped on the Eurostar, gone straight into practicing? It just felt so...
Has he done that?
it felt such a quick sort of transition, and we'll hear from Alcaraz, I believe, about that transition and coming to the Queen's Club. But clearly it's a tournament where it holds a lot of memories for players as well, because they love playing it and love playing it straight after the French Open. So the calendar, despite where it is in the calendar, it doesn't actually necessarily affect people's enjoyment of it. I think it is that sort of very quick change, a bit like the English summer. We go from great weather to bad weather. And I feel like that's almost a bit like we change seasons, completely change seasons when you suddenly see the green of the Queen's Club.
So, Chris, I'm going to ask you, what is your overriding Tennis Weekly Queen's memory when it comes to all the court action that we've seen over the years?
Yeah, I forgot Kim asked us that. But I remember I used to love, at the time, watching Andy Murray coming up, and really some of his early big wins were at Queen's. So I think for me it would
Queen's
be
is like Haller to Federer. I feel like Queen's is to Murray, because he's a 5-time champion.
He is, which is, I mean, hugely impressive. And I think Judy Murray was what they call him, the King of Queens, which I think is kind of
Isn't that a TV show?
I think it is, but also I feel like the King of Queens quite often refers to like New York as well. So it's a bit confusing. Like, is it the New York location?
Yeah.
But so I think when he won his first title in 2009, he beat James Blake. I really loved that. I think we've seen him, maybe not have the attrition before that, some of the cramps and some of the issues he had physically, but he always put in a good showing. And I think that was really symbolic of like a very big time and changing the guard in British tennis, because Henman had been to so many sort of late stages of the tournament, and then here we come, the new hope, and boy did he deliver after that. So I'm going to say that, but I have to say a negative memory as well, though, Joel.
Okay.
The last time I went was actually when Juan Martín del Potro slipped when he beat Shapovalov, and he refractured his kneecap, and he never was able to kind of get back to that. And I think it's the last match that he won. So I think for me, like I'm really going back further with what I say, because the last one I have, I'm almost scared to go back because I don't want to cause Murray or anyone else an injury again.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because it's so early on in the grass court season, and sometimes these courts have never been played on. It was interesting to hear from Jack Draper talk about the fact that you do get players slipping and sliding about when there's still a bit of moisture in the air, the courts haven't been played on, and you typically see that early on in the tournament, but actually by the end they become a lot firmer. If it's sunny as well and the courts are exposed, then that moisture dries out and they become a lot safer. And he was talking about how Stuttgart, and he was talking about how Stuttgart almost played like a hard court, by the end of the tournament. And I'm sort of hoping that comes quicker, because we've seen a few hair-raising moments, I think, this edition. But I think that's one of the challenges with grass is your movement and coordination. It's very different, I think, from clay.
And the women are going to break it in, I was going to say. So maybe that will be different. We need to also bear in mind for this episode that there's double the opportunity to go. But before we get into the future of the tournament, Joel, we have to finish up what Kim asked us. What is your memory of Queen's?
I mean, my overriding memory is actually one of my first ever tennis memories, and it's going to Queen's, or how I used to call it, the Stella Artois Championships, when it was all red branding. Back in the day with my mum, we went to, I just always remember, we went to Tim Henman versus Leighton Hewitt in the final. I think they played each other in 2 finals. Tim Henman never won here, but he did get to he did go all the way and get to the final. He's finished runner-up a few times. But I always remember that. So those moments, and seeing like Leighton Hewitt on a grass court, he was an exceptional player. Packed crowds, sparking my imagination, getting me excited about tennis. And similarly now, I'm all grown up, but I watch. I see, kids about the grounds with their big yellow tennis balls, seeing the players walk around and, taking photos and getting autographs. And it really does remind me of, a moment that, these events are, as I say, they can live long in the memory and spark the inspiration and imagination for kids who might be, tennis players growing up.
To start a tennis podcast, is that where the inspiration came from,
yes.
Joel? On the courts at Queen's, you were there and you saw Tim Henman and thought, right, let's start recording.
Exactly. So that's my overriding memory. I mean, we did have some of our listeners get in touch and talk to us about their overriding memory. So thank you to our Tennis Weekly listeners who have done that. Darren spoke about the fact that Murray and Lopez winning the doubles.
Ooh, that was really fun, wasn't it?
Yes, I remember that. It was like, I mean, Feliciano Lopez also in Queens. It's just like match made in heaven. We also had Lee as well. Now Bandian's default in the 2012 final. I think we can all remember that, because that was just a very strange moment, wasn't it? When he kicked the side of the boards and hurt a line judge. And
goodness, yes.
That was it.
Strange favourite memory, Lee, we have to say.
And we also had Hawkeye Gnu, I hope I'm saying that right, say the Davis Cup tie against France. So, not just the Queen's tournament per se, there has been Davis Cup action here as well.
Yes, indeed. And great to hear about all of those different memories. And I think it does remind you of those sort of British summer. It's a very nice time of year in the UK. So I think whatever way you look at it, there are so many great memories from this tournament. But Joel, we must move on to your verdict. Maybe our verdict, I might have a little bit of input here and there, but this is the debut of the Tennis Weekly event scorecard. I notice all of these aspects are very heavily branded, Joel. But
any aspect is the Tennis Weekly. It's the Tennis Weekly thing.
Absolutely, and maybe we need to get the scorecard printed on the back of our t-shirts and we can fill it in as we go, or maybe get it printed for your notebook and you can be sitting in front of Carlos Alcaraz writing notes about the room decorations or the food that you had at lunch. But there are 4 criterias that goes into this. This is going to be the definitive Tennis Weekly
5
guide.
criterias, Chris. 5.
Oh, 5.
I've made sure there are 5. Sorry. Yes,
exactly. Right. Well, I'm already doing well because I've only scored it on 4, but it's the tickets, the ease, obviously, of getting the tickets. That's something that's really important. It's the idea of kind of the impressions of the tournament venue around the grounds. We've got the on-court experience. We'll go as nitty-gritty as, do you get a good view? Is there a bad seat in the house? The atmosphere. And then finally, and sometimes most importantly for people, is the food and drink. So that's 5 criteria.
Kim is going to be very listening, I think, with intent when we talk about the food and drink.
Absolutely. I mean, what is the beverage of choice? I'm sure it's just going to be a Pimm's, but let's see how we go. But Joel, we're going to start with the ticket. So this one might not be as relevant for you this year because obviously you didn't have to purchase your tickets. But in terms of the ease of it and in terms of the sorts of tickets that you can get, what would you say?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different to Wimbledon. It's not in a ballot system. So there's already, I think, positives from that point in terms of you can access these tickets through like the LTA, for example, and purchase them. So I don't think it's as difficult as Wimbledon if you want to see some kind of top level tennis in the capital. There is lots of different types of tickets, but I would generally say that access is very good. And, you're never going to get, there are seats for centre court and court 1 as well. So it's not just all on one court. The action is kind of spread out. I guess the one minus thing is that I think with Queens, its sort of image over the years is, I think people think of it as quite corporate and it's just full of VIP and hospitality. And do they really actually care for like the tennis fans? I think that's a little bit unfair actually, because I think, in terms of going to the event, seeing kind of just regular punters, regular fans, out in the crowds, it really is a fun day out if you want to get some really quality tennis action in.
Yeah, and in terms of the actual ticket process, if you are in the UK, for our UK listeners, and you are playing at a tennis club, then you are able to qualify for the LTA Advantage, which has a pre-sale. So for Eastbourne this year, I was part of that pre-sale, so it's in the same process as the other grass court events, but they do go live earlier. It's the first one that goes live. So there are ways that you can have better chances of getting in. And I do think on the corporate side of things, I think for me when I went, it was more surprising because of the sort of the clubhouse nature that you see on TV, that there was this gigantic operation that was also happening from a corporate side of things. But when you think about it, it actually doesn't diminish from your experience, because it still is, and we talked about this on the Monday, we'll talk about the atmosphere as well. I mean, it was packed, as you said, on the last podcast. So I think it's not a case that the corporate seats aren't being enjoyed, or anything like that. I think there is just quite a big business operation in place, and from other tournaments like Bostar, it's a huge time when for the Swedish economy where big deals are made, almost at the Swedish sort of Riviera. So it's not uncommon, but I think when you say, oh, the 1800s clubhouse, you might think potentially you wouldn't have so much of the sales and corporate side attached to it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, moving on to our second criteria, which is around the ground, and I think just linking to that point in terms of, you know, what there is for just kind of general fans, and it really is kind of I'd say it's a little bit of a compact venue. I'd say it is a club after all, but certainly they've got food and drink areas, they've got some activities going on, they've got kind of like a tennis ball, like through some. I'm gonna be explaining this terribly, but they've got some kind of fun, kind of summer school fete type games kind of going on for
quintessentially British.
Yeah, it's very quintessentially British. Exactly.
Is it like what would be a school fete game? Is it like Splat the Rat?
It's like trying to throw throwing a tennis ball through various holes for various points,
like a coconut shards type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So there's some sort of options there.
And have you spent a lot of time there, Joel?
Yeah.
Have you
I've
won?
been watching other people sort of do it and then being like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't try it because I'll probably embarrass myself. But I mean, I think what's really nice is that, you know, you've got the outside courts and there's so many top players practicing because this is for them effectively the start of the grass court season. So even if they're losing early, for example, you know, they will stick around a few days and be on the practice courts. You know, I saw Ben Shelton yesterday just working on his serve for about 30-40 minutes. So it really is great, I think, to see and get an insight into just like practice schedules and not just be focused on all of the action on the court.
Yeah, it's almost dual purpose, Queens, because they are also adjusting. So they really are spending a lot of time on the practice court and practicing their grass court game and seeing how it sort of measures up. So I think that's super nice. I think it's very nice when you go between some of those outside courts. It feels very intimate and very almost like you're sneaking around, like you shouldn't be seeing, what's going on. You almost spring out of a hedge at one point, which I think is
there's like these like narrow gangways that you need to get on, and it does create that little like excitement of
who's going to be here,
who's here.
Yeah,
and I do really like, actually, they've got signage up. There's like an electronic LED display that actually tells you the player who's practicing on the court. So you're not kind of like wondering, hang on, who is that? Is that this? Is that that? So that's kind of really nice to see. But certainly, yeah, walking around, you just never know. Walking around the corner, who might be on a
or who you might bump into.
Yeah, or you might bump into.
You might bump into a player walking past you. But I think it's Genuine is a lovely place to walk around, and it has all the sort of facilities that you would need, and the seating areas. I think it's definitely a case that you're able to sit down, have a rest, take in a different area, as you've said. But we've talked a lot about around the ground, the on-court view, Joel. So you've probably sat in many different seats at Queen's. Where is the best seat, and what would you say overall about the view?
I will always say the best seat on a tennis court is on the angle of the corner.
I like diagonal and high, personally.
Behind the court. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting with the seats, I think, on centre court, because you've got the kind of the clubhouse on one side, and then you've got this huge bank on the other side, which is it's very steep. It feels
David
like,
and Goliath.
Yeah, I went to the top of it on the Sunday on the fan day, and I was like wondering if I was going to get vertigo at one point. But yeah, it's kind of like a steep bank of kind of on one side, and I would say there's no kind of bad seats. It's not like Arthur Ashe where there's the nosebleeds. I think even if you are a little bit higher up, you still get a really good view, unobstructed view of the court. And I think regardless of where you are, it's always, I think, nice to be in kind of like an intimate setting and see the action. You can see everything as well. You can see the players walking out from the clubhouse onto the court. You really do kind of get the full experience. It's not just like they're in a tunnel under the court and they just like pop out from nowhere. It's just nice to see, I think, them do that walk through the gangway onto the court, and it really just feel kind of quite transparent and open. And just seeing that as a fan, it's just really nice and adds a nice kind of classy touch, I think, to the proceedings.
It's super classy. I think my only kind of grievance that I would say is that if you are not aware of just how big the stands are, that would be just one thing to make sure to avoid disappointment, because you will still get a good view, but you might not be as close or as intimate as they portray it on TV. There is a bit of a difference. You do get the flashes of the stands, but as Joel has said, I mean, it is quite a big stand. It is a 500, so there are a lot of seats there, and a lot of people want to watch the tennis. So it still is great, and it still provides our next topic a great atmosphere, no matter where you're seated. So the atmosphere we've touched upon, Joel, already. I think obviously that kind of lives in all of these different places.
I thought the atmosphere was going to be terrible because, as I say, you always sort of associate. I'll just sort of, I think a lot of people think, I think this goes for a lot of events when you think like, it's going to be very corporate and people are going to be more interested in their drinks and talking to one another than actual the tennis. But the days I have been so far, it's been fantastic, and the greatest sort of respect I can give to that is the fact that even on day one, a Monday weekday, like in the afternoon, centre court is packed, and it's genuinely impressive to see so many people, pack a stadium on what I would consider like could be just kind of a bog standard weekday round one. And you compare that, as I say, to other events where they do have, I think, issues with filling stands early on in the tournament. It's genuinely impressive, I think, what Jamie Murray, the tournament director, and the team have done in terms of getting and driving kind of fan participation and getting so many bums on seats early on in the tournament.
Yeah, it's so good to see, and I think it's a stark contrast to what we see potentially culturally in France at the French Open. I think what's so nice is that even if people are there from the corporate side of things, they are very much there to enjoy the tennis. And you don't have to have much knowledge of tennis. I think it's something where people in the UK enjoy the time of year, they enjoy what it represents, and everyone is there to really take in, learn some new player names, find a new favourite. I think it is a super, super lovely time. And that kind of brings us on to the food and drink, because we have talked about the atmosphere. We've kind of said that drinking isn't too much of a problem.
I think they do.
Yes, they do, don't they? I remember that I didn't sample too much of the food and drink that were on offer, so I'm not sure how helpful that I can be, because we did bring some food from home. But what would you say about the choices for fans attending?
If there's one thing that maybe draws kind of the Queen's experience down a little bit, it is not necessarily the options, but the cost involved with the food and drink. It's quite chunky. I would almost kind of say to some fans, consider bringing, and you can do so, bring your own, food with you, because although there's some nice options there, it can get quite pricey quite quickly. And Chris, just as an example, I mean, everyone is going for their pictures of Pimm's at Queen's. Ooh. How much do you think a picture at Pimm's costs?
A picture, so that's going to be quite large. You probably get about maybe four glasses out of it, 4 large glasses, probably £10, maybe 50, £47.
Oh, okay. You've gone actually very, very pricey. Not that pricey, but £33 for a picture of Pimm. So I think that probably
I
gives you
live
an
in
idea,
Denmark, listeners, so I think everything is that much more expensive. So
but you do get to walk around with a nice, it's like a very traditional kind of picture.
That's a steal. I think maybe we
just walking around with your picture. Yeah, it looks quite fun.
One day we'll have to share one, yourself, Kim and I. I think that would be the ultimate when we're all at Queen's. But that does lead us to the scores. So we have these 5 areas across the areas we've just discussed. And Joel, because you are the most experienced at Queen's, you will be providing the definitive Tennis Weekly score for this event. And also, I should give you the opportunity for any other business, anything else you'd like to raise, any caveats before you go into the score?
I would give it bonus points for the fact it had a fan day on the Sunday.
Okay, yeah.
Because that's something that not a lot of tournaments do. And it's something I would love a lot more tournaments to do, where it's a lot more open. And if you can't afford the ticket prices for during the week, you can come down on the weekend prior for where qualies are on, practice sessions on the centre court. It really is a fun day out. So I'm giving it a sort of bonus hat tip for the fan day on the Sunday.
And then from an overall score, then are you giving it a bonus point? Where are we headed with the numbers?
So
out of 10.
I'm going to give it. It is a premium experience on the tour. I would say that is, I think, how it's positioned, and I think it does live up to the billing when you as soon as you kind of step into the grounds. It's very nice. There's lots of balconies and the food options are great. Maybe it's a little bit expensive. The court seating as well, great views. So therefore, I'm going to give it 8 out of 10.
Ooh, I thought you might go for a 9 there, but I guess you've got to
give
reserve.
It an 8. I think maybe the cost brings it down slightly. But in terms of just kind of if you want just a great day out of seeing some quality tennis and know you're going to get a good view, I think it's a very good shout.
I think that's a very good way of putting it, because it is the one that you go to probably for one day as opposed to multiple days. Like you might be able to go to Eastbourne across multiple days. It is that little bit more affordable, and there is that bit more action that happens outside. So it is a very quintessentially British experience. And I think based on my experience, I would probably go for a similar score. It was a bit wetter that day, and I still enjoyed it. So I would say an 8 is very fair. But if we're talking premium experiences, I think for most people who are spending a lot of money, I think it would be right up there, because I think the scale of it being smaller than Wimbledon does mean it is that bit more exclusive. But before we kind of go into the second half, where we'll be hearing what the players think about their time on the court this week, we also reached out to our listeners for some of their tips. A lot of the tips are around food and drink. They say bring your own packed lunch. I actually went with some friends and one of their mothers, and she actually tried to bring in her own alcohol as well when it was Fever Tree in a Fever Tree bottle. So I'd say you cannot bring in your own booze, but you are able to bring in your own packed lunch. So I would say bring your packed lunch and have a picnic is always a fantastic way to enjoy the tennis. And then another one that was very popular was bring sun cream and a sun hat, because
definitely
there is no shade. No shade at all. So Joel, you're looking at a little bit on the pink side.
Yeah, I am a little bit red, and I think that's one of the things with the centre court is that there is no shade. So when it is sunny there, definitely make sure that you're kind of well protected. My top tip, and I've already sort of referenced this, is think about going to the fan day on the Sunday pre-tournament, because you have Queen's qualifying going on, because it's a small draw for a 500, you do get some quality players playing in the qualification. Players are also practicing on the centre court. They open the centre court up for practice. So, for example, you see like Carlos Alcaraz and Andy Murray, do going through the motions, finding their feet on the grass courts. You might even see a practice set if you're lucky. So, I would have a think about going on the Sunday. It's not just all the main draw action. Exactly.
And I've heard of that from a few people. So Liz, friend of the show, she actually prefers going to the qualies, and I think that's a thing where people really do love it, because there is all that action on the outside courts as well. I was thinking some top tips that might be useful, Joel, is where is Queen's, for those who don't know? Is it very accessible in London, or how do you get there?
So Queen's is in West London, and it's generally, accessible given it's central London. It's on the tube line. It's a lot more central than Wimbledon, which is a little bit more on the outskirts. But genuinely, you can just hop on a train. You can either go to Barons Court, for example. I've been going to West Brompton. There's lots of different transport links that you can do. So from that point of view, also, it's very, very good.
And you can pop in after you've gone to work, potentially. You can come and see it afterwards because it is so close. So that is also a top tip, is that you don't need to set out, hours and hours before or queue for a ticket there. So I think that probably brings an end to our tips.
Yeah, that's a very good one, actually, because you don't have to... You don't have to think about like it being like, oh, I'm going to go out for the full day, because I think they do resale, and people can get in the evening if you just want the evening experience, similar to Wimbledon. So yeah, that is also a very good top tip. But we're going to be taking a quick break now. Do join us in the second half, where we will be going behind the scenes in the press room at Queen's and hearing from the likes of Carlos Alcaraz, Andy Murray, and former Wimbledon finalist Milos Raonic on their grass court preparations. So do not go anywhere. Chris, we have given our own points of view, and now it's time to hear from the players this week and hear about their grass court preparations and how it's all going at Queen's. And we're going to start off with a bang. We're going to start off with hearing from the Queen's champion from 2023 and recently French Open champion Carlos Alcaraz. And it was interesting to hear Carlos Alcaraz because he was speaking about how he transitions from clay to grass. And this is him talking about what's the one thing he thinks he needs from moving clay to grass in such a short period of time.
Physically and the movement. That's for me the most important thing that I really focus on. I came here on Saturday and I couldn't practice just 20 minutes due to the rain. And then Sunday and morning I had good practices, playing sets, playing points with Andy and Terundolo as well, and trying to get a good rhythm before start the tournament. But the first thing that I really focus on and I practice when I switch from clay to grass is to be good physically and try to move well.
I find it so interesting that he talks about being physically ready as one of the most important things. And I think that, that is even more important when you just do not have time on your side. He's French Open champion. He's literally played on Sunday. He spoke about the fact that, he's only had I think he only had 2 practice sessions because of some rain and whatnot. So to talk about just being physically healthy, I think is a kind of a very good start, very good way of looking at it, particularly for him, because he knows, I think, deep down that that's probably one of his biggest advantages over the competition is his physicality on the court. Something we know Rafa for, but certainly Alcaraz, I think, is the embodiment of that as well in the sort of new generation.
Absolutely, but we did talk about the speed of the transition and obviously getting your body ready, but I mean, ultimately, he did find some time to go to Ibiza to celebrate, and I think you heard about that, right?
That's very true. Yeah, I mean, in press they were talking about how was Ibiza? Have
Pasha?
You got the tattoo as well? He was talking about for to celebrate his French Open win.
He's had some time.
He's had some time off. Yeah, I guess you do need that moment.
The mental break as well as physical. Yeah.
Iga Swiatek, she'll go see Taylor Swift in Liverpool, but yeah, Carlos Alcaraz wants to do a bit of partying in Ibiza.
Yeah, and sometimes that's the relaxation your body needs after the strain of, winning a French Open and then coming straight to the grass courts. But again, it's great that after all that tennis, he still is talking about that he knows physically he's in a great place because, a lot of people, they might not be. And kind of this transition, and when we talk about the Olympics, transitioning from clay to grass back to clay again, that's actually been a reason that's been stated for them to miss things. So I think maybe that's because players like Ons Jabeur with her knee potentially, players like Emma Raducanu who have experienced injuries previously, they aren't going to take that risk, whereas someone like Alcaraz can do it all. And I think that's, as you say, a real advantage to his physicality.
I do think this part of the season is when, particularly in an Olympic year, it kicks into overdrive. We're going from clay to grass. The grass court season still relatively is quite short. Back to clay for the Olympics and then to hard. So just to be physically healthy is, it definitely is so important because it's like you got to be ready now for the the grind of going lots and lots of different places, adjusting to lots of different court surfaces, and also being ready to potentially win some titles. So it was interesting to hear from him, and it's good to see. I think him, he was having the sleeve on, the Milos Raonic sleeve. We've seen him on tour recently, but it's good to see he's not wearing that anymore. So it's, I think, a positive sign that he's, as I say, he's fit and healthy and 100% raring to go.
And one thing we also have to adjust to is the potential for a big three-less Wimbledon. And I think there was also the opportunity for Carlos to talk about that. And that's becoming quite a real possibility that we might be only talking about the little two. Well, I forgot what we're calling them, but I mean, that's...
We're still working it out.
We're working it out. But Carlos had to think about what it would be like, obviously, without the big three at Wimbledon.
Well, honestly, I didn't think about it. Of course, I saw the stats that is the first time since 2004 that no one of the big three is playing Wimbledon. I saw it, but I don't think about it. I don't feel more pressure about playing a tournament that no one of the big three is playing. I'm just focus on myself. For me, I'm gonna play the same level, or I'm gonna feel the same pressure being with the big three in the tournament, or having none of those three. It's gonna be for me the same tournaments. Of course, with as a fan of tennis, or to every people who are gonna watch the tournament, it's gonna be the same. Not being able to watch those players, but for me, it's gonna be the same.
Chris, it's crazy to think that this could be the first time since 2004 where there'll be none of the big three. We're still waiting to see if Novak Djokovic will be attending. But, Alcaraz talked about the fact that he doesn't feel like he'll feel any different. He doesn't feel like there'll be more pressure on him or Sinner to sort of rise to the occasion without these greats of the game there. Do you think, as a fan, kind of as a spectator, it will fundamentally feel different if we don't have Djokovic along with, Federer and Nadal?
I think it will feel different, especially in the latter stages. I think generally tennis is very popular, as I've mentioned, in the UK, but not necessarily the knowledge of the different players is that high. There are fan favourites. But I think ultimately the atmosphere will still be great. I think the interest might be a little bit different. I think it might be different for different reasons. Seeing which one of Jannik Sinner and Alcaraz will come out on top, or somebody else. I think it does offer the potential for a new story. And I think that's something we always love at Wimbledon, whether that's Emma Raducanu having her breakout run to the fourth round, Mira Andreeva having a really fantastic run last year. There were always these stories of a qualifier who makes it to whatever stage of the tournament. I think that's what Wimbledon is about. It's about those stories. It's about all the players being inspired to be there. So I actually think that it may feel a little bit different, but ultimately I think the stories will still be as engaging.
And one of the big stories already at Queen's this week has been around Andy Murray and the fact that he has reached 1,000 ATP Tour level matches, which is an incredible achievement. He did that with his win in the first round over Alexei Popyrin. And here is what he had to say about the occasion. And just on that 1,000 tour level match milestone, how much does that mean to you? And when you stepped foot and played your first ever match on the tour, did you ever think you would actually reach 1,000 matches as a milestone?
I mean, it was not something I've ever thought. I didn't know until my mum told me today. Genuinely didn't know that was how many I'd played. And yes, I mean, it's obviously a lot of matches. There won't be, I guess, in recent years, there won't be too many players that have played that many. And considering the amount of tennis that I missed over a period of over a period of years with the injuries and stuff. Yes, good effort to get there, but it was not something that I ever thought about when I started on the tour. I was not thinking about how many matches I was going to play or win or whatever. But yeah, I had a very, very long career, and it's been really, really good to me. But it's been tough on the body as well.
I think that last line, taking its toll on the body, I think just sums up how much he personally has kind of gone through to get to this point. And it sort of made me wonder that, reaching this milestone, it sounded like he wasn't even aware of it. He wasn't kind of going into the match kind of really thinking about it. But it just reminded me, I think, of the resilience that you need and that ability to kind of keep going again and again, regardless of, what speed bumps you might hit, particularly when it comes to your body. Do you feel like you only reach these sorts of milestones with that sort of like mindset and approach and that toughness that you need, that almost like accepting that, I'm going to get injured at some point, but in order to make my career last, I'm just going to have to get up and go again once I'm healthy?
I think the 1,000 is more impressive when you know what someone has been through in their career. So I think for Andy Murray reaching 1,000 and then winning his 1,000th match, not that he won 1,000 matches, but he won that match. I think that really does provide a little lift in that sense, because it's such a big achievement, and it's not necessarily the performance related, it's the fact that you've stuck it out. And I think that's what's so important with this, is that a lot of players who might retire early, they might not be able to have the perseverance in that way. Not saying one approach is better than the other, but for someone like Andy Murray, who in 2017 his career could have been stopped, who has made it to 1,000, we probably thought this would never happen, that we'd have this extra time with him on court. So for me, I see it as a real celebration of his commitment to the sport, and the fact that reaching this number is just so impressive. And I don't think that many people have reached this number. So,
well, Chris, no, not many people have. Andy has become just the 5th active male player to reach.
Oh, don't ask me.
1,000 tour level matches on the ATP Tour. Do you want to have a guess at the other 4? Now, I'm going to caveat now, and this is a little bit of a clue. There's one player on here that I think active is maybe, yes, they are active, but you're probably a bit like, oh, okay, I didn't realise they were still active.
Okay, so I hope it's not like a Joe Wilfred Songa, but I thought he'd be retired. But
not a Songa.
I know one of them for sure, because I remember this, was Richard Gasquet.
Very good, yes. 1,004, so actually not that far in front of Andy Murray.
Oh, wow. I felt like he'd played more matches than that. Maybe he's playing more challenger level at the moment. But that was my main one. I
mean, there are two really obvious legends.
Is it Nadal and Djokovic?
And
then?
Djokovic, yeah.
I guess when you win that much.
Do you know, interestingly, perhaps more interestingly, which one has played more matches?
Well, I would think that Djokovic... Injury layoffs, I'd say Djokovic has had more matches.
That is correct. So Djokovic has 1,324 matches, which is very impressive, and again speaks to his almost superpower abilities to stay in great shape. Rafa has hit 1,300, and the final player on the list, along with Gasquet and Murray, sitting at 1,006 is...
Ooh, if I one more guess. Who's been around for a very long time? It's not a Dimitrov, is it?
Long time. Kim might know the answer. There's another clue for you.
Oh, a Spanish player. It's not Bautista Agut, is it?
It's not Bautista Agut. It's Fernando Verdasco.
Verdasco.
Yeah, Verdasco. I know, it's surprising, isn't it?
That is surprising. And he's an active player. That's also even more surprising.
Well, I know, that's probably the more surprising thing, isn't it?
It is.
So, yes. But yeah, there you go. So, yeah, congratulations, Andy, on reaching that milestone. I'm sensing, can he get past Verdasco? That's, I think, the sort of the big question for me.
Can he get past Gasquet? That's also doable.
But I mean, regardless, hitting 1,000 as an incredible achievement. And actually, there was one other record of note that's already happened at Queen's, and we just had to get the inside scoop on, and it was Milos Raonic, who, it's nice to see him, first of all, fit and healthy and on a grass court. And he broke the record this week for the most aces in a best-of-3 set ATP Tour level match with 47.
47.
Incredible. I know, incredible achievement. And this is what he had to say about it.
With the scoreline and having to save match points, I probably needed every single one of those. But, you know, my serve's always been the most important shot to me. This small record, it's something special, something meaningful. And I'm glad that behind that also stands a win, because maybe I'd feel a little differently or maybe a bit more sour if I was to get that many free points and lose the match. So overall, a very positive thing and a fun stat to be proud of.
He made a good point, didn't he? Because imagine if you lose a match where you serve 47 aces, Joel. I mean, then you'd be remembered for the wrong reasons, wouldn't you?
I know. Imagine just like going through the process of hitting all these aces, getting the record, but then losing. I mean, that would, yeah, it's
soul destroying.
I always think with this stuff, yeah, it's always about, like, I always wonder with records, like, do you feel it, or do you feel a sense of achievement if ultimately it ends in a loss?
Well, I'm not sure. It's like, I think there was one point where Andy Roddick hit the fastest serve and Federer returned it. He lost the point. And you think, well, I mean, it's great that you hit that many or hit that harder serve, but at the end of the day, I mean, if it's not working,
softens the achievement. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it takes the shine off it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
what a number, Joel, and that's almost, in fact, that is pretty much 2 sets worth of aces. Not one for long points, is it?
He had to win it. Yeah, I think it just showed as well how good, you know, Cam was playing. It was just one of those games. It's just one of those days where, you know, the person opposite you who's a fantastic server, I mean, it is such a core part of his game, was just on one.
Do you think that with a serve like that, obviously he's not playing the best off the ground or the best he has played off the ground, but do you think if you can serve like that, he'll always be a threat at Wimbledon?
I agree. I think he's always going to be a threat. He's always going to be a player you just don't want to face, because he can go and have these performances, and because the serve is the first shot in a point, is the one you can control the most. And when you can produce stats like this, yeah, it can go a long way. So yeah, Raonic definitely, if he can keep injury free. I always feel like we have to caveat that with Raonic whenever he steps onto the court. But if he can do that, he's certainly going to be someone you do not want to see opposite you in round one of a grass court draw.
Absolutely not. And I would say if I was giving him any advice, I'd say rest up until the grass court season and then bring out the serve bot game, because, I mean, that number of aces, the mind boggles at what could happen.
Do you enjoy watching these sorts of matches? Because he was playing Taylor Fritz yesterday, and it was the last match on centre court, and it was like serving was a dominant force. Can you take pleasure from these matches, or how do you take pleasure from these matches where the rallies probably are quite short?
I really do enjoy a game where you get 3 aces in a row and everyone's thinking, will the last one be an ace? Will it be without any rallies this game? So that can sometimes be quite fun. I think watching, especially women, when they have really good service displays, I talk about this multiple times in the podcast already, Konta Vekic, when they're serving that well, I think that is fantastic grass court tennis. So I want both players to be serving well, because then I do think that it gets you through it, you get to the tie break. But if it's kind of a battle like this one where someone is winning all the rallies, someone's winning all the service points, it does sort of make you think...
Just get to the tie break.
Exactly, you just want to fast forward.
Yeah, you're just like, just get to the tie break.
Yeah, but I mean, I quite enjoy
I
it.
know.
It's part of the game, especially on grass.
It's funny, yeah. It's just one of these things that especially happens on grass. I mean, the courts have changed over the years, and I guess it's not as dominant as it used to be, particularly I think in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, growing up, it felt like, say, serve and volley was the norm, and you've still got remnants of that, and it sort of lives on, I think, through players like Raonic. But it's definitely, I think, evolved over time. So we'll see. I mean, Raonic is he's a good competitor. We hope to see more of him as the grass court progresses. But listeners, we're going to end our Tennis Weekly Diaries episode here for the Queen's Championships. I hope you've enjoyed listening to our thoughts on the tournament, as well as hearing from players such as Carlos Alcaraz, Andy Murray and Milos Raonic. But we're going to end it there. Remember to subscribe to us to stay up to date on all the action to come from the grass court season over the next month or so. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and all major podcasting platforms out there. And if you like what you're hearing, then make sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
And if you want to follow all of the action from Queens at Eastbourne, where Joel and myself will be, you can follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube and X, and the handle for all of those is Tennis Weekly Pod. You can also purchase some of the Tennis Weekly merch that Joel has been sporting around the Queen's grounds. That's at etsy.com/shop/Tennis Weekly Podcast. You can email us or email the show. Do tell us ahead of the Eastbourne episode, what are your top tips for Eastbourne? And that's at tennisweeklypod@gmail.com, or do check out our website, tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we will be back on Monday at Tennis Weekly HQ, so I hope you can join us for that. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. We'll see you again soon.